The last couple of years have been very, very challenging for every single one of us that are managing people. Hi, my name is Andrew Patricia, and I've been around TradeWinds for quite a few years, mostly at the launches, running some seminars and training programs. And what I'm going to try and share with you today is how do we become better managers? Because I think our challenges become quite big because there are new things that we need to go through as managers. And I almost think of this as a relaunch. It's a new stage for TradeWinds, and for a lot of us, it's a new way of managing people. So let's just go through some of the main tasks that you and I have as managers. So if I'm managing a base, if I'm managing people anywhere, these are some of the things that I need to focus on. Firstly, I've got to be really good at planning. Planning becomes really key going forward because we need to be organized so that we can give the best possible product to our guests. The second thing you and I need to do is we need to organize. We need to become great organizers so that things get done. Leading is a really important part of being a great manager. And today I'm going to share with you some tips and ideas on how do you become a better leader and a more successful and motivated leader at your base. And finally, we have to control. I'm going to discuss a bunch of the really important things that you and I need to do to ensure that we build a profitable business. Because at the end of the day, if TradeWinds makes profit, all of us benefit. So let's start off by discussing planning. One of the first things I would do if I was you is start off with, what are your goals for the next 12 months? What do you want to achieve at your base? And if I was you, I'd start off just with a pen and paper and start writing down things that you want to improve. And I'm sure there's a whole lot of stuff, whether it's staff training, whether it's the turnaround times, whether it's our inventory, whatever it is, I want you to write down things. And I don't want you to limit yourself. I want you to write down as many things as you can think of that you could do to improve your base. The next thing you want to do is you want to be a little bit strategic about it. You want to write down your main objectives for the next 12 months. So what specifically are you going to work on and what outcomes do you want? And then develop a plan to achieve those objectives. So a really simple system. What do you want to achieve at your base? What are your goals for the next 12 months? And very importantly, what are you going to do to achieve your goals? So a simple little system that I think you should use actually on a daily basis. Think of it. Every single day, you and I have tasks that we need to achieve. If we write it down and plan it, it makes it so much easier. So plan your week, plan your day, and plan your year. And this is going to make you a more successful manager. The second thing that I think has become really, really important, especially now that we've been through this crisis, and it's been really challenging, and for some of us more than others. One of the advantages we have as managers of people or leaders is often we are more motivated than average. And I know a lot of you, and you are more motivated than average. So what makes a great leader? The first thing is honesty, and that should be obvious to every single one of us, is that honesty is the key to being a great leader. The second thing is great communication. I find that many times when we are working with people, when we are dealing with certain issues, it's often a communication thing. People don't understand it. They don't know what their expectations are. And because of that, we often have challenges as managers. The third thing, which I think is very, very important, is as managers, we need to be accountable, because at the end of the day, if TradeWinds is to be a successful company going forward, that's our responsibility. We, the leadership. So we've got to be accountable to TradeWinds, the organization. We've also got to be accountable and make sure that our employees or the people that work under us are accountable. And I think what happens in the case of TradeWinds is a lot of times we're working with young people. And when you're working with young people, I think it's really important that you're very, very clear on exactly what needs to be done. And secondly, explain what needs to be done. And one of my favorite examples is, for example, inventory. If you don't explain to everyone working with inventory that every single time we spend more money, it costs the company more money. And we've got to be very, very careful of that. And many times we'll justify it. We'll say, well, if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have got the sale. But the reality is, over the long term, this has a big impact on the company. And one of the things that I think about that makes me really quite happy is that a lot of companies didn't survive over the last couple of years, but Tradewinds did. And I think that's the key thing, is they must have done something right. You people and the leadership were accountable, and that is why Tradewinds survived. So think about this. The next thing is you need to be confident. I believe this is a key to being a great manager, is that you believe in yourself, you are confident, and you're confident on how you lead your people, and then you need to be committed. I think the next 3 to 5 years, I think are going to be a massive opportunity for Tradewinds. I really believe that. I think more and more people are going to be seeking out the vacations and the product that we sell, and I think this is going to be a big opportunity. So you and I need to be committed to growing the company. When you and I need to be committed to improving our basis and improving the quality of our employees so that they become accountable and help us achieve our goals. The next thing we need to work on is control. As a manager, that is one of my key functions, and it's one of your key functions. Every single one of us have to set certain standards. What is acceptable? And you're going to be very, very careful of this, is because sometimes what happens is we let things go. We let things go and we let things go, and eventually they become a problem. So it's key that you set really high standards at your base so that people understand, you know what, these are the rules, these are the guidelines, and we need to stick to them. The second thing we need to do, measure our performance. And one of the things that I would encourage all of you to do over the next year, especially as we're coming out of this crisis, is to really understand your income statement or your profit and loss statement. And I encourage you to reach out to some of the financial people in Tradewinds so they can help you with this. Because at the end of the day, our financial statements are like our report card. They give us really useful information. So I'd encourage you to do that and really measure how you're doing. You know, measure your food cost, measure how productive your employees are, all of those things you want to be doing, because that's what good managers do. The next thing I would do if I was you is set yourself really strict budgets. One of the lessons I've learned over the years, and obviously I'm much older than most of you, all of you, is that if you've got $10, you'll spend $10. If you've got $8, you'll spend $8. So what happens is that if we don't set ourselves guidelines, if we don't set ourselves limits to what we should and shouldn't spend, you know what, we'll overspend. So it's a really good idea to give yourself some benchmarks or budgets. And I encourage all of you to start off slowly and start setting budgets for your base so that you can measure yourself against what you want to achieve. So let's use an example. Let's say my goal over the next month is to keep the food costs at 30% say. Then you want to make sure that you measure that against what you actually achieve. What was my budget and what did I actually achieve? And that is going to make you a much better manager. But just think of it even in your personal life, is that if you can use some of these systems in your personal life, it's going to make you more successful. The other thing we need to do as managers is to really analyze our expenses monthly. And I would like to see this really growing over the next year or two in Tradewinds, because we need to do it. We really need to do this. For Tradewinds to survive and thrive, every single one of us need to manage our expenses very effectively. And then if we see there's a problem, and over the years, at the conferences, quite a few times, we've identified problems and often come up with solutions. And that is exactly what I want you to do, is when you can identify what the problem is, the next thing you want to focus on is, how do I solve that problem? And that is what good managers are. One of the things that I find that is very, very challenging, and I mentioned this earlier on, is communication. And I think as managers, every time we meet with our employees, we need to be very, very clear on exactly what our goals and our objectives are. This is really important. So your employees need to understand what is expected of them. That's the first thing. It's almost like an accountability thing, isn't it? Secondly, I would encourage you over the next year or two, or even 3, is to have more regular face-to-face meetings with your employees. And the reason I believe this is important is because then they can really discuss some of the challenges they're having and have this open discussion. And the more times you have open discussion with your employees, I think the better it is. The other thing you want to do, and I think this is really key, is make sure that your employees understand what's going on. Because in many cases, and I don't know if this has happened to you before, is when employees don't really know what's going on, what they tend to do is they create rumors. They create rumors because there's nothing else to find out what's going on. So I think this open communication is really going to benefit your base going forward. And make sure that you're very approachable. You know, people will often say this, you know, that my door's open, anybody can come in. But if people are afraid to walk in that door, what's the point? And I think the next 2 or 3 years are going to be vital. You and I need to listen to our employees and encourage them, give them feedback so they understand what they're doing really well, and more importantly, what they can improve. And also ensure that people really understand. And I believe this goes across the board, you know, from your most senior employees to your most junior employees. I think communication is a key thing. And I've seen a breakdown in this so many times, little simple breakdowns that have impact. The other thing that I think makes a great manager, and something that you and I should be working on, is becoming a great coach. If any of you ever played sport as a kid or growing up, you know the importance of a coach. It's somebody that inspires you, that motivates you, and really encourages you to do things much better. And I think this is something you can do with all of your employees, whether it's your salespeople, whether it's the crew, whether it's people that are employed to clean. I think it's very, very important that they know that they can approach us. So what do good coaches do? Good coaches listen. I think this is really, really key, that every single one of us need to become good listeners. Good coaches help the employees set goals. And I've always done this over the years, is try and understand who my employees are, what motivates them, and then more importantly, help them set personal and business goals for themselves. The other thing you want to do, and I think this is a really simple thing, but a very, very important thing, is that we should praise people. You know, nobody's ever going to complain if you tell them they're absolutely brilliant. But some of us as managers criticize only. That doesn't mean you mustn't criticize people. But I think now is a big opportunity to get your employees on your side and regularly encourage them, praise them, and do this as regularly as possible. Nobody's going to complain if all of a sudden you start praising them and thanking them for what they're doing for Tradewinds going forward. The other thing we need to learn to do is to praise efforts, praise initiative, praise people that come up with creative ideas, because all of this helps the company grow. And finally, which is really important, I think, is we should never stop training. Just think of it. You know, a lot of us have been doing a lot of what we do for many years, but we keep educating ourselves. And that is exactly what you want to be doing. You want to keep learning and you want to keep training your employees. So find the things that you are really good at and share that with every single one of your employees. So let me just summarize before we end off here. Firstly, you need to become a good planner. Planning is the key to running a more effective and profitable base. Secondly, you need to organize things. I don't know if any of you have ever worked for somebody that's very disorganized. It can be quite painful. So how do you organize things? You plan your day, you plan your week, you plan your month, and you plan your year. Simple tools that you can use to become more effective. Become a great leader and coach people. You know, spend a lot of time encouraging, coaching, giving guidance, give advice. Remember, you're not there to be anybody's parent. You're there to guide and advise them. And I think in the case of Tradewinds, we've got such a varied community of people working from us of different ages, I think coaching becomes even more important. You want to control. So going forward, we've got to control our expenses. We've got to improve our profitability because Tradewinds survived these last couple of years. But more importantly, they need to survive going forward. And that is your responsibility as a manager. Finally, listen, encourage, and inspire. I believe if you do these things, you're going to become a much better manager and your employees are going to like you and you're going to create a much more profitable base. So use this information and become a better manager.